I don't even fit, I don't even fit in the frame. Oh no! Oh, I may have made a mistake. Okay, hi, my name is Taryn, and this is a very big box, a very special big box. I found a guy online who wanted to get rid of his collectible because it was damaged. He damaged it by accident, or I think his kid did. It doesn't matter. I got a fairly reasonable price for it, and inside is a 1/6 scale cave troll. Now, I recognize that this is a collectible, that this is supposed to be something that's put on display and cherished, and it's a sculpture and not a miniature, but come on, he was gonna throw it away otherwise if nobody bought it. And now it's mine, and I'm gonna kit bash the shit out of it. Okay, that's much more reasonable now that it's out of the box, and it actually doesn't nearly take up as much space, which is good. The current plan, the current idea is I'm gonna put a giant house on its back, which is gonna give it quite a bit of height. The only other issue I'm running into is just how much wider the silhouette is, and so I think I might actually take one of the arms off, which shouldn't be too hard because it's hollow on the inside, which has made it a lot lighter, which I appreciate. Yeah, let's go for it. Now, I won't pretend even for a moment that I had any idea how long this project would take, but what I did work out pretty early on is that the base was huge and would need ample time to dry out properly in between the different layers of sand, coffee grounds, and other basing material. I mostly focused on covering up any of the tile textures or parts of the original sculpt that would betray the new scale that I wanted. Everything is held down with probably half a bottle of PVA glue, more watered down glue over the top, and eventually a few coats of a rattle can to make sure it's all sealed in. From there, I needed to trim a little weight off of this troll. I'm doing the thing where I get nervous and I'm starting to feel precious about breaking an expensive thing, but that's kind of the whole point of the video. So there's really nothing left to do but to just start doing it. Moving on to something I'm a little more familiar with, let me explain why I felt the need to brutally mutilate this troll while I give it a makeover. Almost all my projects usually begin with a story, and this one is no different. I imagined a fantasy setting where trolls come in all kinds of brightly colored shades and their hides are often sought after by hunters, a trophy to celebrate another monster slain and the troll population thinned. Because in this world, trolls keep growing until they die, and if left unbothered, they can live for a long time. Well, this troll in particular was hunted when it was quite young. It managed to escape its pursuers, but sadly lost its arm in the process. While roaming through the woods, the troll happened upon a witch, who, having her own troubles with the hunters, decided to take on the young troll. Tending to its wounds until it learned to live on its own with a missing arm. And surely enough, after several years, the troll continued to grow and the two became inseparable. It grew until it towered over the witch's cabin. Now that we've updated the face with some long tusks and a new nose, we can look after the giant hole in its side. Filling the gap with tinfoil, I carefully created a shell of old Sculpting around it. This clay needed a ton of kneading to become workable again, so it was definitely reaching the end of its life, and I don't mind using it up here. This would take up most of the mass of the missing muscles, and then I just had to carefully remove it, bake it off in the oven, and hope it didn't warp too much to pop it back into place. From there, I moved on to working with a mixture of green stuff and milliput, just like on the face before. I'm not concerned with copying the texture perfectly, since this needs to be a gnarly looking stump, but I did try to get a smooth transition between the original sculpture and my added clay. Once I had some time focusing on another part of the troll, I realized that I wanted a bigger pair of ears and a much more bulbous nose. It wasn't quite hitting the mark of fantasy that I was looking for. This is why I often switch from one part of a project to another. Taking breaks in between sections sort of resets your brain to see if you actually like the thing you've been working on nonstop for a week now. The last bit of sculpting needed for the troll was the back of the loincloth. There are all these belts, loops, and other pieces that honestly just feel strange at this scale. Like, who's taking the time to make custom troll underpants? I could probably explain everything away with magic if I really wanted to, but anyway, we have a cabin to build. So I've made this structure. I've made this foam house, the idea being that I'll cover it with wood planks, popsicle skewers, and bricks and whatever else. And it's just not, it doesn't feel right. God, I'm gonna regret this. I think it needs to be bigger, which means I'm gonna have to cut out more planks and bricks, but it'll be so worth it. Once again, changing my mind in the middle of a project because I enjoy punishing myself needlessly. Did the cabin really need to be bigger? Let me know in the comments if I made the right choice. Thankfully, I did use my one brain cell to make a cardboard cutout for the base, and then reused parts of the original cabin to beef it up, rather than starting from scratch. I already love the shape of the first draft, so I stayed on the whimsical fantasy vibe and added some curves into the roof, trying to avoid building code wherever possible. Okay, let's be real. You've probably already watched a video on how to make a cabin, and I don't want to edit footage of me gluing 100 planks. Using super glue to do the borders, walls, and windows, I then switched to PVA glue for every plank in between. Everything was eyeballed. No measuring required for this process. The floating fireplace was done the same way and took just as long. These bricks ended up being a little bigger than I would have liked, but I've been working on this for a few weeks now. Once the walls and the fireplace were complete, I moved up to the roof. Strips of EVA foam were cut with individual shingles being added to each row. And finally, I could add on a crooked little chimney. The last bit of character for this fanciful cabin. With everything primed up, I was finally ready to begin the most painful paint job of my entire life. You know what I didn't factor into any of my planning for this build? Just how big it is, and how long it might take if I painted the whole thing by hand. That I could instead just take a can of green spray paint and finish it in one day, and then touch it up later with accent colors and washes. Well, I'll tell you what, dear viewer, if I've learned nothing about painting from this project, I never will. The troll's skin gets progressively lighter as you get closer to its chest, becomes more of a teal on its back and from the waist down, and finally the soft underside of its belly explodes in color. My inspiration for the troll was partly the jade sunset plant and mostly tropical birds. I love the idea that depending on which region a troll might come from or who their parents are, they all have different patterns and colors. I did my best to feather out the orange into yellow and then yellow into green, trying to avoid harsh edges wherever possible. I made the loincloth pretty dark so it wouldn't draw any attention away from the belly, and got to use some of my graphite paint for the metal details. It has actual graphite in it, so it always has a nice metallic sheen. From there, I actually painted the finger and toenails on the troll, but using the same recipe, I made the bone color for the teeth. The only difference is I used more yellow ochre in the nails and less of a brown wash on the teeth. Let's keep moving quickly on to painting the cabin because we're about to hit the 1 month mark on this project. Starting with a pretty medieval looking blue, I laid a base coat down on all the shingles and worked up some highlights with lighter and lighter mixes of blue up to a pure white. I wanted this house to look like it had been sitting out in a damp forest, so I decided to keep the gray primer coat and dry brush lighter and lighter shades. I used a mix of colors for the brickwork on the fireplace, and again dry brushed over the whole thing to bring the colors together. I grabbed my smallest brush to outline some individual planks so I could really accent how crooked they are. I honestly could have spent a month just on painting this alone. It was incredibly fun trying to get the fine details into every nook and cranny. Finally, it was time to put some washes all over this thing, making the planks look like they might be rotting from within. With the painting pretty much done, I could cover the house using some flock I picked up from my local hobby shop. I usually avoid the expensive stuff where I can, but this was ready to go out of the bag, which really cut down on time. One of the last steps was figuring out how it would all attach together, so I quickly painted up some leftover planks and eyeballed some support beams for the cabin to sit on the troll. I imagine there's some Baba Yaga magic happening here, but just like a Boil Eye video, I painted the base and called it good. Well, it's done. This is, I keep looking at it and this is insane. I don't think this qualifies as a tabletop craft anymore, but you can be the judge of that. Thank you so much for watching this video and sticking it all the way through. One of the best ways that you could support me and my insanity is by liking this video, sharing it with a friend, and of course subscribing to the channel. That would be a huge help. Until the next video, I'll see you soon.